I've spent 11 years as a prosecutor in the financial crimes unit, and if there is one thing that decade in a courtroom teaches you, it is that real monsters almost never look like monsters. People expect villains to be obvious. They expect them to twitch, to scowl, to wear cheap leather, or lurk in dark alleyways. But the most dangerous predators in our society don't wear ski masks. They wear tailored beige blazers, silk pastel blouses, and neutral lip gloss. They carry leather portfolios, speak in low, soothing tones, and smell like lavender and expensive perfume. They train themselves to look like the most trustworthy person in any room they enter. Her name was Victoria Sterling. Sitting across from me at the defense table on a humid Tuesday morning, she looked less like a criminal defendant facing felony fraud charges and more like a high-end real estate agent about to close a multi-million-dollar deal. She was 34 years old, impeccably groomed, poised, and utterly calm. Not a single strand of blonde hair was out of place. Her hands rested lightly on top of a mahogany folder, her nails manicured in a clean, understated nude. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look emotional. She sat there with a subtle, serene expression, a look that practically declared to the entire courtroom that this whole proceeding was nothing more than an inconvenient misunderstanding that would be resolved before lunch. And sitting directly across from her at our table was the man she had targeted. His name was Arthur Vance. He was 82 years old, a decorated Vietnam combat veteran, and a widower. Arthur wore a faded navy blue suit. It was clean, meticulously ironed, but noticeably loose on his frail frame. The kind of suit a man buys for a wedding 30 years ago and only pulls out of the closet for funerals. It smelled faintly of cedar chips, old paper, and mothballs. His white dress shirt was buttoned all the way up to his collar, fastened tightly despite the muggy courtroom air. His shoes were black leather dress shoes, scuffed at the toes, but shined with the painstaking, obsessive discipline that only men who spent their youth in military boots ever truly retain. In his lap, Arthur held a battered cardboard folder. The edges were soft, frayed, and curling upward from decades of handling. His calloused, spotty hands rested heavily on top of it, his thumb repeatedly tracing the worn paper edge over and over again in a quiet, rhythmic pattern. The strategy from Victoria's high-priced defense attorney, a sleek criminal lawyer named Julian Vance Cross, was painfully obvious from the second jury selection ended. Gasped the old soldier. They weren't going to deny that $8,700 had left Arthur's life savings and ended up in the bank account of Victoria's organization, Home Honor Outreach. The paper trail was too clean to deny that the transaction had occurred. Instead, Julian Vance Cross was going to attack the validity of Arthur's mind. He was going to turn Arthur's age, his grief, and his isolation into weapons against him. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, Vance Cross began during his opening statement, walking slowly along the jury box with his hands tucked smoothly into his slacks. This is not a case of fraud. This is a tragic story of a lonely, aging man struggling to navigate the grief of losing his lifelong partner. Mr. Arthur Vance lost his beloved wife, Margaret, 14 months ago. Since that devastating loss, Mr. Vance has lived alone in a house that is quietly falling apart around him. He paused, offering the jury a sympathetic, rehearsed sigh. When my client, Miss Victoria Sterling, visited Mr. Vance through her community outreach initiative, he was deeply moved by her mission. He willingly, enthusiastically made a personal financial contribution to her nonprofit foundation. But as the months went on, as his health declined and his family grew distant, Mr. Vance grew confused. He began to mix up dates. He misremembered conversations. He convinced himself that a charitable donation was actually a contract for home repair. Vance Cross turned toward Arthur, casting a soft, pitying look at the old man. "Isn't it true, Mr. Vance?" The defense attorney purred softly, leaning his elbow on the wooden railing separating the gallery from the counsel tables, "that you simply forgot what a non-refundable contribution means? Isn't it true that your memory hasn't been quite the same since your sweet Margaret passed away?" I watched Arthur closely as those words hit the air. His jaw tightened so hard I could see the muscle flexing beneath his thin, papery skin. His knuckles turned stark white as his fingers gripped the brass handle of his wooden cane. But he didn't shout. He didn't interrupt. He didn't throw a fit or wave his arms in anger. He just sat there, stiff as a board, staring straight ahead at the coat of arms behind the judge's bench, swallowing his pride while a room full of complete strangers publicly debated whether his mind was rotting away. When it was finally my turn to present our case, the courtroom felt suffocatingly quiet. The heavy oak doors were closed. The gallery was half filled with spectators and local news reporters, and the hum of the overhead fluorescent lights hummed like a low wire. I walked slowly to the central podium, my notepad resting in my hands, taking a moment to look at Arthur before I opened my mouth. I knew how Victoria Sterling worked because I had spent the last 3 weeks studying her background. She didn't target arbitrary targets. She was a tactical, methodical predator. She monitored obituaries in local newspapers. She scanned public real estate records for homes with long-held mortgages owned by single occupants over the age of 75. She looked for old military flags flying on front porches. She searched for widowers, men who were drowning in silence, men whose wives had managed the finances, the home repairs, and the social calendars for 50 years, leaving them completely lost when the house suddenly went quiet. Victoria had shown up at Arthur's front door 4 months prior. She wore an official-looking lanyard, carried glossy pamphlets featuring American flags and smiling soldiers, and spoke with the soft, reassuring warmth of a daughter returning home. She told Arthur that Homeowner Outreach was a specialized regional initiative created specifically to assist elderly military veterans. She told him that because of his service in the U.S. Army in 1968, his home qualified for a subsidized roof replacement and foundation repair. All that was required was an upfront deposit of $8,700 to secure the materials and schedule the contractors. Arthur had taken every single dollar he had left in his emergency savings account, money he had set aside for his late wife's remaining medical bills and his own winter heating costs, and handed her a cashier's check. And then, the moment the check cleared her account, the promises dissolved. The phone numbers on the glossy brochure went straight to an automated voicemail system that was never cleared. The website listed on her card led to a broken landing page. The contractors never showed up. When Arthur walked 3 miles to the physical address printed on her business card, he found a metal door inside a UPS store pointing to a rented $20 a month mailbox. "Mr. Vance," I said gently, stepping away from the podium and coming to stand near the witness stand where Arthur was now seated. "I want to talk about what happened after you realized the roof repairs weren't going to happen." Arthur adjusted his posture, sitting up straight like a soldier on inspection. "Yes, ma'am," he said. His voice was rough, like heavy iron being dragged over dry gravel, but it was unwavering. "Did you attempt to contact Miss Sterling?" I asked. "I called her office 17 times, Arthur replied simply. "Nobody answered. I left messages. I asked if there was a delay with the materials. I told her the leak in the upstairs bedroom was getting worse. That room, that was Margaret's room. Every time it rained, the water would drip into the bucket near the bed. It felt like I wasn't taking care of her house the way I promised her I would." In row 2 of the defense table, Victoria Sterling leaned back slightly in her leather chair. She rested her chin lightly on her folded hand, wearing a tiny, almost imperceptible smirk at the corner of her lips. It was a look of complete, unbothered superiority. She knew the law. She knew that without a signed formal contract explicitly stating a construction timeline, proving criminal fraud beyond a reasonable doubt in a financial dispute was notoriously difficult. It was his word against hers. A polished, articulate professional against an 82-year-old veteran with no living witnesses. Objection, Your Honor, Vance Cross interrupted smoothly, rising to his feet. We are creeping into emotional speculation and hearsay. The state is trying to evoke sympathy rather than focusing on hard physical evidence. The judge, a stern, gray-haired woman named Honorable Judge Rebecca Thorne, sighed and adjusted her reading glasses. Sustain as to the emotional framing. Counsel, stick to the facts of the exchange. Understood, Your Honor, I said. I took 2 steps closer to the witness stand, and that was when I saw it. It was a detail so minor that if I hadn't been standing directly at the corner of the jury box, I would have missed it entirely. Every single time Victoria's defense attorney raised an objection, every time the word confused, forgetful, or elderly rang out through the courtroom speakers, Arthur's right hand would slowly creep over his lap toward his left wrist. He wasn't wringing his hands. He wasn't shaking. He was tapping his left sleeve cuff. His calloused thumb was systematically buttoning, unbuttoning, and pressing down against a single plastic button at his wrist. He was pressing his skin so hard through the fabric that his forearm muscle was twitching beneath the navy cloth. It wasn't a nervous tic. It wasn't the fidgeting of a senile old man suffering from anxiety. It was rhythmic. It was calculated. It looked like a soldier repeatedly checking the safety switch on his rifle before stepping out of the trench into pitch darkness. I paused. I stepped closer to Arthur, dropping my voice slightly. Mr. Vance, I said, looking directly at his left hand, is there something under your sleeve? The courtroom instantly went stone-cold silent. The low hum of the air conditioner suddenly felt deafeningly loud. At the defense table, Victoria Sterling's small, confident smile instantly vanished. Her chin dropped from her hand. Julian Vance Cross slammed his hand down on the table, springing out of his leather chair so fast his wooden seat screeched loudly against the polished floorboards. Objection! Objection, Your Honor. What is this? This is entirely outside the scope of discovery. The prosecution is attempting to pull a surprise theatrical stunt in front of the jury. Your Honor, I said, turning to the bench, keeping my voice utterly level. The witness is displaying physical discomfort regarding evidence on his own body. The court has a right to examine the physical condition of the witness. This is outrageous, Vance Cross shouted, his face turning red. We were never notified of any physical evidence. Sit down, Mr. Vance Cross, Judge Thorne snapped, her gavel coming down with a thunderous crack that echoed off the high plaster ceilings. The room vibrated with the sound. Judge Thorne turned her sharp gray eyes directly toward the witness stand. Mr. Vance, the judge said, her tone shifting from stern to remarkably measured. Do you have something on your arm? Arthur looked at the judge. Then he looked at me. His milky blue eyes were filled with a profound, painful hesitations. Not the hesitation of a man who was lying, but the deep, agonizing humiliation of a proud man forced to strip away his dignity in front of a gallery full of strangers. Mr. Vance, I repeated softly, roll up your sleeve. Arthur took a deep, shuddering breath. His chest expanded against his faded suit jacket. His hands trembled, not from the weakness of old age, but from the raw, emotional weight of what he was about to do. Slowly, awkwardly, his thick, arthritic fingers reached up to his left cuff. He unbuttoned the small plastic fastener. He took the stiff blue fabric of his suit sleeve, along with the white fabric of his dress shirt underneath, and began pulling it up his forearm. A sharp, collective gasp rippled through the entire gallery. One of the court reporters in the front row audibly dropped her pen. Arthur's forearm was covered in deep, ugly, mottled discoloration. Dark yellow, sickly green, and deep violet bruises ran across his pale, delicate skin. The unmistakable, terrifying outline of 4 fingers and a thumb clamped down with violent force around an elderly arm. But it wasn't the bruises that made my heart stop in my chest. Written directly over top of those purple marks, scrawled across his pale skin in jagged, thick black permanent marker, Slightly blurred in places where sweat and water had tried and failed to wash it away, were 3 lines of thick, shaky handwriting. Victoria Sterling today, 9:14 p.m. No one will believe you. I felt a cold, paralyzing chill run straight down my spine, sinking deep into my chest. The entire courtroom seemed to lose its ability to breathe. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The court stenographer stopped typing, her fingers hovering frozen above her machine. Arthur looked down at his own arm, staring at the black ink stamped into his skin as if it were a scar from an old war. When he spoke, his voice dropped to a low, quiet whisper that carried into every corner of the silent room. She came to my house, Arthur whispered. It was 3 weeks ago. It was late. I had called her personal number from a landline I borrowed at the grocery store, telling her I was going to the police if she didn't bring my savings back. He swallowed hard, a single tear finally escaping his eye and carving a clean line through the dust on his weathered cheek. She knocked on my porch door at 9 o'clock at night. When I opened the door, she didn't have her brochures. She didn't have her warm smile. She stepped right into my doorway, so close I could smell her perfume. She told me that if I went to the state prosecutor, she would tell the court I had attacked her. She told me she had 4 lawyers on retainer. She told me I was a senile, pathetic old man living alone in a rotting house, and that if I made a sound, she'd have me declared mentally incompetent and put into a state home. Arthur lifted his head, looking directly at Judge Thorne. I was terrified, Your Honor, he said quietly, not because I was afraid of getting hurt, but because for a second, I thought she was right. I thought maybe my mind was failing me. I was afraid that by the time a judge looked at me, I would forget the exact time she came. I was afraid I'd confuse the dates, just like her lawyer said I would. I was afraid that if I didn't write it down right then, the truth would vanish out of my head. He looked back down at his wrist. So while she was standing on my porch, grabbing my arm and squeezing it to scare me, while she was leaning into my face telling me no one would ever care about an old man, I reached into my shirt pocket with my free hand. I pulled out my carpenter's marker, and under the shadow of the door frame, while she was yelling at me, I wrote down her name, the time, and her words right onto my skin. He's lying! Victoria Sterling suddenly shrieked, slamming her hands flat against the defense table as she stood up, her face turning bright red, her manicured composure completely shattering into pieces. He's making it up! He wrote that on himself this morning before he came to court. He bruised his own arm. Silence! Judge Thorne roared, slamming her gavel down 3 times in rapid succession. Sit down, Miss Sterling, or I will have the bailiffs place you in restraints. 2 heavy-set sheriff's deputies stepped aggressively toward the defense table, their hands resting on their utility belts. Victoria sank back into her chair, her chest heaving, her sleek composure utterly destroyed as the gallery erupted into a frantic wave of muttering and whispering. Your Honor, I said, my voice cutting cleanly through the chaos. The state requests an immediate 20-minute recess. Granted, Judge Thorne stated flatly. Counsel in my chambers. Now, during that 20-minute recess, the entire foundation of Victoria Sterling's defense didn't just crack, it exploded, armed with the precise, indisputable timestamp written on Arthur Vance's arm, Tuesday at 9:14 p.m. My chief investigator didn't have to guess where to look. He made a single phone call to the local police dispatch department. Within 10 minutes, he had secured high-definition, time-stamped digital security footage from a Ring doorbell camera installed on the front porch of the house, directly across the street from Arthur's home. When court resumed, the blinds were drawn. A digital projector was turned on, casting a bright blue light against the white wall beside the jury box. State's Exhibit 14, I announced into the courtroom microphone. On the screen, a grainy but crystal clear video began to play. The digital timestamp in the top right corner read, October 14, 09, 12:44 p.m. The screen showed the quiet tree-lined street outside Arthur's home. At precisely 9:13 p.m., a luxury white sedan pulled up to the curb. A woman stepped out of the driver's side. Even in the dim yellow glow of the street lamp, her tailored beige blazer and blonde hair were instantly recognizable. She walked up Arthur's front steps. She knocked aggressively on the screen door. Arthur opened the wooden interior door, and then the high-sensitivity microphone on the neighbor's camera caught every single word of the audio, bouncing crisply across the silent street. "Listen to me, you senile old fool." Victoria's recorded voice echoed through the courtroom speakers, cold, sharp, and dripping with hatred. "If you call my office again, or if you speak to a prosecutor, I will have my attorneys file for an emergency conservatorship. I will make sure the state locks you in a psychiatric ward for the rest of your miserable life. Look at you. You're 82 years old, living in a dump, talking to a dead wife. Who do you think a judge is going to believe? You or me?" The video showed the exact moment she reached through the doorway, her manicured hand lunging forward to violently grab Arthur's left forearm, yanking him toward the porch light. And then, in the corner of the frame, under the shadow of the wooden porch roof, the camera captured the top of Arthur's head. His right hand reached into his chest pocket, pulled out a thick black marker, and, with steady, deliberate movements, dragged the felt tip repeatedly across his own flesh. In the courtroom gallery, a woman in the second row gasped loudly. Two jurors covered their mouths with their hands. Victoria Sterling sat at the defense table staring at the illuminated wall. Her skin had turned an ashen, ghostly white. Her high-priced lawyer, Julian Vance Cross, slowly closed his legal notepad, placed his pen flat on the table, and sank back into his chair without saying a single word. He knew what every person in that room knew. It was over. Victoria Sterling did not walk out of that courtroom through the front doors. She was arrested directly at the defense table by two state sheriff's deputies. What had started as a civil contract dispute transformed within 48 hours into a massive criminal indictment. She was charged with felony grand larceny, witness intimidation, coercion, and third-degree assault on an elderly person. A comprehensive forensic audit of her fake charity, Home Honor Outreach, revealed a systematic predatory business model. Over a 3-year period, Victoria had targeted 42 elderly veterans across 3 different counties, stripping them of over $340,000 in combined life savings. She had categorized their grief. She had ranked their isolation. She had turned their dead wives into business metrics. When her trial ended 4 months later, Victoria was sentenced to 14 years in state prison without the possibility of early parole. As the courtroom cleared on that final afternoon, the heavy oak doors opened, letting in the warm, late afternoon sunlight. The reporters rushed outside to interview the sheriff. The bailiffs packed up their files, and the jury room emptied out. I walked over to our table where Arthur was sitting alone. He was standing near his chair, taking his time, slowly and carefully rolling the blue wool sleeve of his suit jacket back down over his arm. He buttoned the small plastic button at his wrist, covering up the dark purple bruises and the black ink that had saved his life. "Mr. Vance," I said softly, coming to stand beside him. He looked up, offering me a tired, peaceful smile. That was the most remarkable display of presence of mind I have ever seen in my 11 years in a courtroom. I told him, my voice trembling slightly with genuine emotion. How did you have the composure to do that while she was threatening you?" Arthur stood up straight, resting both of his hands on top of his wooden cane. He looked down at the worn cardboard folder resting on the table, his thumb touching the faded paper corner one last time. "My Margaret was a high school English teacher for 38 years, Arthur whispered softly, a warm golden light reflecting in his old eyes. Whenever I used to get stubborn or angry or overwhelmed by the world, she'd walk over, pat me gently on the shoulder, and say, 'Arthur, when the noise gets too loud, write down the truth. The world can scream at you all day long, but the truth doesn't change just because people shout over it. He buttoned his suit jacket, adjusted his collar, and took a deep breath of the cool air drifting in from the hallway. He had walked into that courtroom looking like a frail, forgotten victim, a man the world was ready to dismiss as confused, weak, and old. He walked out of it as the soldier who brought down a predator, armed with nothing more than his dignity, a black marker, and the enduring memory of the woman he loved.